Chapter 561. Volt Peak Mountain was also called the Isle of Hell. It was formed with 5 islands. Like a waste disposal center, it accepted prisoners who were on death row, slaves. It was more like a demon-nurturing vessel and a coliseum. To survive there, one had to run and fight non-stop. It was a compulsory stage of experience for every special agent in the world. According to the rules, the first-round candidates would be sent to the 4 surrounding islands randomly. There, they would start their wildlife survival game. 90% of the candidates would be eliminated within 3 months. The remaining candidates would be sent to the main island, where the top 3 candidates would battle their way out of it. After passing the test, those 3 people would be sold off at a high price. They could become a senior security guard at the National Defense, a special agent of a secret organization, or a skillful assassin in a mercenary organization. Olivia knew that most of the winning candidates joined the Black Ravens, the legendary mysterious organization. Ethan had jumped through hoops looking into the matter, but he only managed to find out the scapegoat. The identity of the mastermind remained unknown still. She didn't want to sit still and do nothing, waiting for her death. She had always been the passive party. Ethan gave her a new identity. Clad in cheap clothes, she painted her skin sallow and covered her beautiful looks with scars on purpose. Before they hit the road, he wore a necklace around her neck. It was a tracking and rescue device. Besides, he gave her 2 small bombs for emergency use. Olivia wouldn't refuse something that could keep her safe. She was sent to the entrance to the Isle of Hell. She was able to study the geographical structure of the place in the plain. A thick forest covered the island as it was surrounded by the sea. It was more shocking than the map she had studied before. She was going to experience months of killing and wildlife survival here. Ethan gazed at her with a heavy heart. "Liv, must you really go?" "Ethan, since I'm already in hell, I'd rather go to real hell." Olivia walked toward the usher, who was waiting for her arrival, without looking back. That usher nodded at Ethan before leading her away. Brent was worried while watching her leave. "Mr. Miller, Mrs. Miller's right hand hasn't recovered yet. Are you going to let her go like that? It is a coliseum inside there. She's made up her mind. I can't dissuade her. It'll only make her hate me more. The only thing I can do is to protect her in my own way. But even if you've sent someone to protect her, you'll never know what kind of danger lies ahead. What if, we won't be able to save her in time if she's in danger." Ethan looked far away with a straight back. His eyes were dark. He touched his wedding ring while wearing an unreadable expression. It's normal for kids to go through a rebellious stage. When that happens, the more you go against them, the more rebellious they'll become. Since she wants to see the top of the mountain, just take her there. As long as she's under my control, it doesn't matter if she's far away from me. That's the most important matter to take note of. Brent didn't know how Ethan was going to keep Olivia under his control. Next, Ethan said indifferently, "She's bound to face danger. Let her do what she wants. Inject M1 in her when she's at her weakest state. Then, she will forget everything and return to my side. You're going to use that forbidden drug from the toxic hive. Chris said that it has side effects. What kind of drug doesn't come with side effects? Even the medicine you take for a cold has them, too. I've asked for the details. Pregnant women, cancer patients, patients with heart diseases, and kids are not allowed to take them. Liv is neither of them." Chapter 562. Only then did Brent understand Ethan's intention. Ethan had never wanted to send Olivia to the training from the start. He simply needed a chance to inject the drug into her. Still, there was a voice inside Brent telling him that it was inappropriate to do that. But Mr. Miller, even if Mrs. Miller's past is full of painful memories, she has the right to decide whether she wants to forget it or not. If you inject the drug into her without her consent, what if she recovers her memories? Will she forgive you? Do you think that I haven't considered that? Forget about how difficult it was for her to come this far. Revenge is the only thing on her mind. She became unusually sensitive. She can't have a good night's sleep every night. The ruffling grass alone is enough to wake her up. Whenever she falls asleep, nightmares plague her. Plus, there's a huge wall between Olivia and me. I have no other choice. He lifted his silver wedding ring, which reflected the sunlight shining upon it. I've finally found a way to break out of this stalemate. As long as we inject M1 into Liv, she will forget her painful memories, including how I had hurt her. Madness and exhilaration were evident in Ethan's expression when he talked about that. She will become the woman who only has her eyes on me again. Our marriage will be perfect, and no one can ever ruin it again. Brent parted his lips, but he didn't know what to say. He simply hoped that Ethan would have his wish granted. The man Olivia was following was robust and had tanned skin. Miss Fordham, I know why you've come here. I will do everything in my power to protect you. You can call me Joseph. She nodded. Thanks. This tropical place is close to the equator. It's hot, humid, and rainy here. Which means it bears an abundance of resources here. There is a lot of food to eat, but there are many poisonous living things, insects, plants, and animals. It's sketchy everywhere. Olivia had done a lot of research before coming. She also received a map from Ethan, so she knew the scores. I've researched all the plants and animals. Don't worry about it. Okay, I'll send you to prison later. Just act like a prisoner on a death row. All of you will undergo training together for a month. After that, you will be sent to the island for kills. The training Joseph mentioned was actually a time for the candidates to get to know each other and form their own allies. The trainer had told them that only 10% of the candidates would be able to stay. Those prisoners were on death row. Hence, they would naturally have the will to become a part of that 10% so that they can start their life anew. Still, they didn't know that the trainer was hiding something from them. After winning, they would be sent to the main island for the final battle. The ones who survived were usually the person who had hurt their own teammates. That was the final trial. Humanity. Rooting humanity out of an individual would make him a qualified killer. However, Olivia knew all of the hidden rules. Thus, she didn't plan on forming allies with anyone. When she was thrown into the dark prison, all eyes were on her. Male prisoners outnumbered female prisoners. When they noticed that she was a woman, someone whistled. It's a woman. Someone clicks his tongue. And she's ugly. Switch off the lights, and they'll all be the same. Chapter 563. Mischievous laughter could be heard. Calmly, Olivia scanned the area. There were a total of 11 people in the room, 9 men and 2 women. Aside from Olivia, a woman was shrinking herself at a corner. Since they were prisoners on death row, they must be malicious people. Olivia knew that Ethan would definitely have a backup plan for this. One of the people here worked for him. She sat down at an empty corner, and the first man to speak to her before this approached her. He stank, probably because it had been a while since he last showered. The tall man placed his hand against the wall next to her ear. Frowning, she questioned, anything I can help you with? No matter how you came here, you have to listen to me from now on. You have to do everything I say. Got it? Olivia raised her gaze on him. What do you want me to do? He grinned lecherously, revealing his yellow teeth. There are only men here. Now that we have a female joining us, what do you think we're going to do? Take your clothes off and please me. The other men came up to her while sizing her up. She's ugly, but she has a hot body. She's skinny but curvy. I bet it'll feel nice to touch her. Milton, you're the leader. You can have fun with her first. I'm happy enough to be able to slurp some juice. What are you looking at? Take your clothes off. Didn't you hear him? Keep looking at us, and we'll dig your eyeballs out. Well, I guess she's just shy. We can do it ourselves. Before that person could touch Olivia, she yanked his wrist over to trip him over the shoulder. He crashed onto the ground before he could realize it. She was too quick. By the time he registered the situation, he was already shouting in pain. There were no skillful people like special agents in this room, so they weren't professional in martial arts. That was why Olivia was able to have the upper hand. Milton Lowry's face fell. Go to hell. He reached out to hit her. However, she was quick enough to push his and another man's heads together, knocking them down. A loud thud resounded as a result of their heads cracking. She casually took the only bowl, which contained water, and smashed it. With a piece of the fragment, she held it close to one of their necks. If you have a death wish, I can grant it to you. Her voice was icy. Olivia was grateful to Jeff for sending her to martial arts schools since she was young. She had the basics. Thus, she made huge progress after undergoing special training. In the past, she was so kind as to treat everyone with goodwill. Kindness was the synonym for being weak. Now, she cut everything out that would hold her back. Since she was all alone, left with no plan B, she was ruthless and nasty. It took Olivia less than 1 minute to take down the big guys. Joseph rushed over upon hearing the commotion. He saw her holding fragments as the others were rendered into a pitiful state. Joseph, this woman here is too nasty, someone accused her first. Joseph said before she could explain, would she hurt you guys if you hadn't messed around? I'm warning you, the training will be starting tomorrow. If you die here, you'll be fed to the sharks. Don't cause trouble. Olivia threw the fragment away and exercised her right wrist. Her right hand couldn't react as quickly as her left hand. The men behaved after receiving a warning, but their gazes were equally menacing. Obviously, bad blood was formed between them and her. Olivia returned to the corner, sweeping her gaze across everyone casually. The 5 men had already formed an ally with Milton as the leader. Excluding that woman at the corner, there were 4 men left. 2 of them were cushioning their head, sleeping with their backs facing Olivia. One of them was leaning against the wall while the remaining person was doing pull-ups. It was as though what had happened a second ago had nothing to do with them. They didn't even spare a glance over here. Noticing her gaze, the man leaning against the wall with his head hung low suddenly lifted his head. They looked at each other. She could see his face. His hair was messy, and his fringe covered his right eye. The air around him was so overwhelming, warning others to stay away from him. Could he be the person assigned by Ethan to protect her? Chapter 564. The remaining time passed without trouble. Olivia stayed in the corner all the while, resting her back against the wall. Milton and his gang kept casting a vengeful gaze at her sometimes. She knew that they were biding their time for a chance. When they were sent to the island, the killing started. Thanks to the special training, Olivia was able to be one of the top candidates with flying colors. The 2 men who kept sleeping in a corner were twins. They wanted to form an ally with Olivia, but she turned them down. She was a lone wolf. She had been observing the other woman named June Redmont. Everyone kept a safe distance from her. Not even Milton dared to mess with her. She had a dark aura looming over her, giving off a snake-like character to Olivia. Like a poisonous snake, June loved to stay in a dark corner. She wouldn't mess with others. But when someone provoked her, she would counter without holding herself back. Olivia attempted to get close to June, but the latter ignored everyone with a deadpan face. Olivia was safe during this month's training. Tomorrow, the candidates would be sent to an inhabited island. There were a total of 100 people, but the number of surviving candidates was only 10. Before the morning came, Joseph distributed a rescue pack to each of them. He explained the rules before leading them to board the plane. Next, they had to choose one of the 4 big islands to land with a parachute. Before Olivia jumped, she noticed Milton mime slitting his throat at her. She jumped, and Milton's gang followed suit. They let out excited screams above her. She opened her parachute, and the huge parachute was extracted from the pouch. She fell at a steady speed. She was studying where to land but realized that Milton's gang showed up around her. They were even closing in on her. Milton, we got her surrounded. Let's see how you can run away this time, you little bitch. I'll drain you out later on. Despite their filthy remarks, Olivia appeared calm. She was no longer a weak young woman anymore. She controlled the parachute according to the wind. There was about 1,500 feet to the ground, and everyone was getting ready for landing. But Olivia preempted them first. Feeling the direction of the wind blowing, she moved closer toward Milton when the wind blew stronger. Quickly, she threw a rope knife at his parachute rope. The rope twined around the knife. If the friction didn't stop, it should be able to cut his parachute rope off within 30 seconds. Milton roared, "You fucking bitch. How dare you do that? Stop, I'm telling you to stop." She smirked. "Cool your head in the sea, dude." She grasped the rope knife tightly, and he was furious. It was too far from his reach, so he could only watch the rope getting cut. Now that one of his parachute ropes was cut off, the parachute couldn't keep its balance. It was blown away by the wind. "I won't let you off that easily, bitch." Milton. Olivia couldn't care less about it. After she found a place to land, she prepared herself for it. Although the process was troublesome, it was fortunate that she managed to land smoothly. She quickly packed her things up to leave the place. The landing marked the start of the actual hunting. She didn't have an ally, and it was dangerous to be alone. Olivia had to look for a temporary shelter as soon as possible because it was getting darker soon. A bite from a poisonous spider was enough to get killed. As an experienced person, Olivia was ready to let her skills shine through. The water biscuits in her bag could last her for 7 days. She was saving them for the final round. She made a simple shelter. She found some fruits and plant roots, as well as some herbs for emergencies. The night painted the sky black, and the stars gave it glitters. The starry sky was breathtaking. Olivia gazed at the stars. She had been so busy all the while, so busy that she neglected everything. When it was quiet, she would recall snippets of her memories. Even now, she would place her hand on her belly out of habit. But her womb was empty, just like her heart. The living Olivia was an empty shell. In the middle of the night, Joseph stood behind Ethan. "Mr. Miller, Mrs. Miller has the skills. I didn't help her out during the past month. She completed every mission with perfection." Ethan's brows were furrowed tightly because that was not what he wanted. "She's had enough fun for now." Chapter 565. Ethan's expression was indifferent. He was willing to grant Olivia freedom, but only if the freedom was within the boundaries of his control. The danger on the island was out of his control. A single accident could cause him to regret. "Yes, Mr. Miller, I'll get her disqualified now." A few minutes later, Joseph came running over anxiously. "Bad news, Mr. Miller. The tracker on Mrs. Miller has been disabled." Ethan threw away the cigarette between his fingers and looked at him abruptly. "What did you say?" "I checked a while ago, and it was fine. It didn't lose its signal. It just disappeared. That tracker was made with sturdy materials. It's hard to break unless Mrs. Miller disabled it herself." Ethan furrowed his brows. It was clear that Olivia did it intentionally. She probably guessed that Ethan would get her disqualified this round. She had already made up her mind to join the Black Ravens. So, she acted before Ethan could make his move. Ethan knew he shouldn't have underestimated Olivia. She wasn't the naive woman she used to be. The island was huge, and they were supposed to stay there for a few months. It would be hard to find Olivia without the tracker. Start searching from where the tracker's signal disappeared. Be quick. Immediately after Ethan said that, Joseph said with a helpless expression, "The last location where the signal came from was in the ocean." Brent exclaimed, "Mrs. Miller is leaving herself with no way out of this." Ethan grabbed the armrests so tightly that the veins on the back of his hand popped. "Contact them. Have them find Liv as soon as possible. I don't care if they get exposed. Send more people in. Let me know as soon as she's found." "Understood, Mr. Miller." Ethan knew of the grudge Olivia had with Milton and the others. Milton went straight for Olivia when they were parachuting. Although Ethan's men followed, they lost Olivia because the wind blew hard. Ethan felt even more restless now that Olivia had disabled her tracker. She had completely vanished into the woods. It was the last time she would still have her freedom. Although the days were filled with danger and hardships, she had finally taken off the chains that were holding her captive. It was Olivia's plan all along. She had lied to Ethan. It was the only way she could get away from him. As long as she didn't get disqualified and got to the final round, she would be bought by the Black Ravens. Then, she would be able to get away from Ethan completely. Olivia was very cautious. She didn't even start a fire at night for fear of exposing her location. During the day, she had to travel with minimal rest. There was a mountain on the island. The peak was where the final battle would take place. She saw a lot of corpses on the way. Those were the people that were killed before her. She felt lucky because she had not met anyone yet, only beasts. But her luck ended right before she was about to scale the mountain. Even though she remained cautious the whole way, she was still discovered. On her way to the mountain, she had been scavenging for fruits. She didn't want to leave any trace of her existence, so she only ate fruits. Under the setting sun, Milton was leaning on a tall tree. He stared at Olivia menacingly with his arms crossed. "It's been a long time, bitch. Do you have any idea how long I've been looking for you?" One of Milton's underlings was standing behind another tree. He was holding a fruit in his palm. He bit down on the fruit with a vicious expression when he saw Olivia. The juice of the fruit flowed to the ground from his hand. Against his sullen face, it was as if blood was flowing down instead. "Why don't you run, bitch? I'd like to see where you would run to. There's no one around, so we can take our time and have our way with you." Olivia knew that she had fallen into their trap. These men had their sights set on her since the beginning. She took a few steps back subconsciously, but she collided with someone behind her. There's nowhere to run. Olivia was shocked to see that Elias had allied with Milton. His hair had grown longer when they hadn't seen each other. It was covering a huge part of his face. Chapter 566. Olivia didn't have time to catch up with Elias. She performed a shoulder throw on him and ran without looking back. She could hear Milton yelling from behind, "Why are you so useless, Elias? You can't even capture a woman. Fuck, she slipped right through our fingers." After her, the men started to run after Olivia. Elias lay on the ground and connected a call with his earbuds. He said slowly, "I've found her." Then, he got up slowly and watched as the others went after Olivia frantically with a sardonic expression. Olivia was fast, but the ground in the woods was uneven. Occasionally, there would also be snakes on her path. The sky was slowly darkening. Olivia was sweating from the heat. The men chasing her were following closely behind. It was like a game of tag. "There's nowhere for you to run, bitch." One of the men took the chance to pounce at Olivia when he saw that she was running out of breath. He thought he had caught his prey, but then he felt something hard on his chest. Before he could react, a gunshot rang. His blood splattered everywhere. The scene of Mona's passing flashed in her mind again. Olivia's shot was fatal. No one expected her to have a firearm. "Travis!" Milton yelled angrily. "Who are you? Why do you have a gun?" Olivia didn't want to use the gun if she could help it. It was against the rules, and it could expose her true identity. But she couldn't afford to hold back anymore. She pointed the gun at Milton and said, "Scram." It was the first time Olivia had taken a human life. She felt nervous even though these men were violent, death row criminals. Her heart was beating very fast. She thought the gun would scare them off, but the death of Travis angered Milton. His eyes were bloodshot with rage. "Fucking bitch, I swear I'll rip you to pieces." Olivia fired a few more shots, but Milton and his men were able to evade them. "You're out of bullets, aren't you? It's our turn to attack now." Each of them pulled out a dagger and was preparing to rush her head on. The odds were stacked against her, but she had no choice but to fight. Olivia was quickly overwhelmed because she was fighting against 4 men. Just as a blade was about to sink into her arm, another gunshot rang beside her ear. This time, even Olivia was shocked. Elias was the one who opened fire. Milton was stunned momentarily before he burst into rage. He looked at Elias with confusion and asked, "Where the fuck did you get a gun?" "Fuck, you're supposed to kill that bit." Another shot was fired. Milton's right shoulder was hit. Elias looked at him nonchalantly and said, "I'll give you another chance to rethink your words." Olivia could already guess Elias' identity. "You're one of his men." She thought the twins were Ethan's men. She didn't expect Elias to be working for Ethan. Elias shrugged and said, "Mr. Miller told me to tell you that the sun's getting real low, and it's time to go home, Mrs. Miller." Milton even forgot the pain he was feeling as he listened to their conversion. He said through gritted teeth, "What are the two of you talking about? Nothing is making sense to me. A fool like you don't need to understand." Elias pressed the gun on Milton's forehead and said, "All you need to do is apologize." "Fuck you, I'll never apologize." "What a foul mouth. Maybe I should." As they were arguing, Olivia took the chance to run away. Elias was speechless. It's all your fault, idiot. She ran off again. How am I supposed to report back like this? Fuck you. You're the fucking idiot here. Your whole family are idiots. Milton didn't stop cursing. Elias pointed the gun at the others and said, "Go, get her back. Don't hurt her. If you can do that, I'll spare your lives." The men quickly went to go after Olivia, but they quickly lost track of her. Fuck, where did that bitch go? Elias casually started to smoke. Fuck, how the fuck did you get cigarettes? I want one, too, Milton said viciously. Elias wasn't in a hurry, either. He went to the edge of the water and pulled out a snorkel. His voice wasn't loud, but it was enough that Olivia could hear it under the water. I found you, Mrs. Miller. The game's over. Chapter 567. Most of Ethan's men were like him. They were silent and expressionless. But Elias was an exception. He was a wildcard and had an impish temperament. There was no reply. Milton was smoking, and his shoulder was bleeding. He said mockingly, "Do you think she's under the water? There's a strong current under there. She'd be dead if she went down." Elias ignored Milton. He added, "I'll be getting to the final round. Don't worry, Mrs. Miller, I'll help you accomplish what you want to do." Before Milton could insert a snide remark, someone emerged from the water. Milton was about to scream in shock, but he saw a pale-skinned woman who was the embodiment of perfection coming out of the water. The water washed away Olivia's disguise. Her skin looked like it was paler than before. It was like she was glowing. Her hair and face were soaked. She looked like a mermaid. All the men were dumbfounded when they saw her face. They've never seen such a gorgeous woman before. Elias already knew that Olivia was wearing a disguise. Like the scar on her face, for instance. It was initially below her eye, but it shifted a few inches. He was sure that the woman that Ethan was in love with wouldn't be too ugly. But he didn't expect Olivia to be so beautiful. Olivia didn't realize how much of a shock her looks were to the men before her. Even Elias was taken aback. You mean, just as Olivia was going to speak, she saw Elias motioning for her to be quiet. Olivia remembered that there were other people around and stopped talking. Elias pulled Olivia out of the water by her arm. She was then dropped to the ground. I'm sorry, I'm just a ruffian, and I don't know how to treat a lady. Olivia wasn't in the mood to talk about that. She knitted her brows and pleaded, can't you just pretend you never saw me? I want to settle my own scores. Elias shrugged and said, it's too late. He should be here shortly. No, even if he came by helicopter, it would take him longer. Just let me go, all. A heavy voice, filled with panting, came from behind a big tree. Olivia, you underestimate my love for you. Ethan was dressed in camouflage. His face seemed to have been scratched by branches and was bleeding. There were also some wounds on his arms and body. He got on the island a few days ago and had been chasing after Olivia. Elias sighed and said, look, it wasn't up to me to let you go. Ethan looked taller and slenderer in camouflage. He reached out to Olivia and said with a gentle gaze, come home with me, Liv. Hints of anger and hatred flashed on Olivia's face. She said, Ethan, you said you'd set me free and let me do whatever I want. Are you going back on your word again? Ethan saw that she wasn't about to cooperate, so he slowly walked toward her with a feeble expression. I didn't expect you to try doing something so reckless. Liv, I did set you free. Didn't you have enough fun? Milton and the others were dumbfounded. They couldn't believe the ridiculous drama that was unfolding before them. He nudged Elias and said, do you have anything to snack on? Milton thought it was best to have something to snack on when enjoying a show. He didn't know how, but Elias took out some peanuts and gave him a handful. Come, pass it around, and enjoy the show. You don't get to see something like this every day. Chapter 568. Milton and the others were enjoying the show that Ethan and Olivia were putting on for them, but Olivia only felt anxious. I tried so hard to get to where I am now, Ethan. Please just let me go. There are things that I need to do. Ethan didn't stop walking toward Olivia. She began to attack him, but Ethan was a way better fighter than her. He was able to subdue her and hold her in his arms. Your safety is the most important thing in the world. I chose this path. You should support my decision if you love me. I refuse to let you walk such an extreme path because I love you. Liv, I'll help you exact vengeance my way. You need only go home with me and be my Mrs. Miller. Olivia glared at him and said, "What are you talking about? I told you before, I'll never marry you again. We're done. A relationship between the two of us is no longer possible." "Nothing is impossible." Brent and Kelvin showed up. Olivia noticed that Brent was holding a syringe. She could tell that it wasn't anything good. "What do you mean? What's done is done. You can't change the past. Everything that has happened caused the rift between us. Even if you want us to get back together, I'll never agree to it." Ethan sighed deeply and said, "Liv, I can't turn back time, but maybe we could pretend nothing ever happened if you lost your painful memories." "Lose my memories? How can someone just..." "Liv, you underestimate the persistence of humans." Helen's love for Mr. Carlton was so deep that she never forgot about him even though he left her for so long. She had been trying to develop this drug for more than 10 years. A drug that could induce memory loss without any stimulants. Helen wanted to use this drug on Mr. Carlton so that he could forget about Miss Parker and love her for the rest of his life. But fate played a cruel trick on her by taking Mr. Carlton from her. Olivia's back was covered in sweat. She had witnessed firsthand how insane Helen could be. She didn't mind spending years of her life just to set her enemy up. "That medicine," Ethan smiled warmly and said, "I have it on me. Don't worry, the side effects are minimal. A small dose will be enough for you to forget about your past completely, Liv. I don't mind if you hate me. Once you forget everything, you'll fall in love with me again. I swear I'll care for you for the rest of your life." A shiver went down Milton's spine. He said, "Damn, is that man out of his mind? Boss, why do I feel like he's scarier than you?" "He's not just scary, he's completely mad." Olivia shook her head. "I don't want to lose my memories. Liv, you'll be free if you forget all those painful memories. Please listen to me. I won't ever try to hurt you. Just pretend you're going to sleep. Everything will become better when you wake up. I love you more than before, and we'll have babies together when your body recovers." Olivia tried her best to struggle, but it was all for naught. She fell into despair. "Liv, you said you wanted to come here, and I made it happen, but the games end here." Ethan's voice was gentle, but Olivia could feel the chills when he heard her talk. Ethan kissed her on the forehead as he injected the syringe into her arm. "Dear, you'll be free after you wake up. There will never be any more pain. There will only be joy and happiness for the rest of your life. I look forward to spending the rest of my life with you, Mrs. Miller." Chapter 569. Olivia tried to break free, but Ethan knew her too well. She was completely subdued and couldn't move at all. Olivia was upset. She tried so hard to get to where she was. She almost got into the Black Ravens. She was so close to getting away from Ethan and regaining her freedom. "No, I don't want to lose my memories. Ethan, don't make me hate you. Where's the antidote?" "There has to be an antidote, right?" Olivia grabbed Ethan's collar tightly, but he smiled. "Liv, I never thought about undoing this, so there is no antidote." Olivia slumped to the ground and stared at her battered palm. It was only then that she realized how arduous her journey had been. She endured so many hardships. She even had a few near-death experiences. Her painful memories were the reason she was alive. She tried very hard to get to where she was. She had become strong, no longer weak or fearful. She had broken out of the chains holding her back, but Ethan wanted her to revert to who she used to be. Olivia wanted to hit Ethan, but she started to have a splitting headache. She clutched her head and rolled on the ground in pain. Ethan asked angrily, "What is happening?" Brent explained, "It might be due to Mrs. Miller's physical condition. Everyone experiences different effects after they take the drug. Also, Mrs. Miller is different from the drug testers. Most of those who agreed to test the drug wanted to lose their memories. Mrs. Miller is resisting too strongly. That's why she's having a headache. Don't worry, Mr. Miller. The side effects will pass in a few minutes." Ethan crouched down and held Olivia in his arms tightly. He tried to comfort her repeatedly. Olivia felt like her head was going to explode. She said in a shaky voice, "Ethan, Please don't make me lose my memories. I've experienced a lot of pain, but there are more happy moments than sad ones in my life. My memories are the only things I have left of my father. I don't want to lose them. Liv, we'll make more happy memories together when you're with me. Olivia grabbed Ethan's shirt with both her hands. She was in incredible pain, but she said through gritted teeth, "You're scum, Ethan." Olivia could feel every inch of her head throbbing with pain. She was in so much pain that she could barely breathe. Eventually, she felt like her memories were like pictures flashing in her mind. Everly's teary farewell, Jeff's calm expression before passing, Mona's smile while covered in blood, the car losing control and crashing through the guardrail, Chloe's passing, her wrist being shot, the helplessness she felt as she was pinned on the operating table. Every single memory. Olivia was in so much pain she started to see things. She tried her best to reach out and hold on to the people in the memories. She wanted things to go back to the way they were. But the memories were flashing very rapidly. Olivia felt pained, and her emotions were fluctuating. In that snowy winter, she and Ethan divorced. She experienced the pain of losing a child for the first time. Ethan was drunk and told her that he wanted a baby. He planted a whole garden of roses because he loved her. Jeff was relatively younger then. He was gentle and elegant. He was also the most loving father she could ever ask for. She was the genius student that everyone looked up to. She stood on the stage with pride. She saw the handsome man in a white shirt standing in the field. When she was a child, she would always ask Jeff when Chloe would be back, but she was happy most of the time. Her memories stopped at the scene where she picked up a young man covered in blood in an alley. She saved his life and smiled at him before she left. Olivia had just realized that the young man from the long-forgotten memory was Ethan. So, they had met. So long ago. Memories rewound to when she was a child. It was the first time other kids bullied her. Jeff shielded her behind her back. And Chloe's departure. Olivia could see her 22-year-old self becoming and getting further away. Then, before she went out of sight, she smiled and waved at her as if she was bidding farewell. Olivia was crying as she ran frantically toward her 22-year-old self. Don't go. Don't leave me. Chapter 570. Liv, you have to find your happiness. I told you, I would, keep you safe. This is goodbye, Olivia. Liv, I'll protect you and your baby. My daughter is so pretty, but I came around too late. Olivia, you're so awesome. You're number one in the city. Olivia, I like you. Would you be my girlfriend? Kid, are you here to buy buns again? The usual, right, got it. Olivia, if my grandson bullies you again, I'll beat him up even if I have to climb out of my grave. Olivia, are you planning to study abroad with those grades? You're the most talented kid I've ever seen. Girlie, what's your name? I'll come looking for you. The people she had met appeared before Olivia again like they were saying goodbye. Olivia tried to reach out and grab them, but they always vanished before she could touch them. Ethan watched worriedly as she ran around frantically and grabbed the air with her hands. Then, she sat on the ground dejectedly and cried. Ethan walked toward Olivia. Olivia's memory stopped at the time when she was a teenager. She met the young man in the white shirt on the field. He reached out to her with a gentle expression. He said, "Come home with me." Olivia's mind blanked. Then, her vision faded, and she fell to the ground. Before she lost consciousness, she heard him calling out, "Liv." Ethan carried Olivia in his arms. Although there were some tiny accidents along the way, everything was still in his control. Everyone else looked on in bewilderment. They couldn't process what they were looking at. Milton stopped enjoying the peanuts he was munching on because he saw that Ethan's gaze had fallen on him. His blood froze in his veins as a bad feeling crept up his chest. Sir, this is all a misunderstanding, Before he could explain further, Ethan glared at him and said coldly, "No loose ends." Elias, who stood behind him, rubbed his hands and said, "Understood." Before Milton could yell, he was already on the ground. The last thing he saw was Ethan carrying Olivia into the woods. A group of intimidating men followed him. Even in his final moments, Milton didn't know who Ethan was. His head slumped weakly, and he closed his eyes for the last time. Ethan's long-suppressed emotions took a turn for the better as he carried Olivia into the helicopter. He couldn't help but smile as he thought about how he would be able to repair his relationship with Olivia soon. Ethan had been exhausted in the days he spent looking for Olivia. He fell asleep with her in his arms. In his dreams, he saw Olivia running toward him like she used to in a white dress. She leapt into his arms like an innocent child. Then, she smiled brightly and said, "Ethan, I've missed you." Ethan frantically wrapped his arms around her and kissed her on the top of her head. "Me, too," he thought. "Liv, there will be no rift between us after tonight. All the unhappiness will be gone with the wind. You'll be my only Mrs. Miller from then onward. I'll never let anyone hurt you. You'll never be in pain again. We'll have babies of our own. A lot of babies. Welcome home, dear Liv."